A lot of people I work with, their progress is severely slowed down by the situation they're in. And I think it doesn't get enough credit. So people are in a situation that restricts their growth, that screws with their mind, may even negatively affect their body. And because of this, their self-development crawls along at a snail's pace. And actually the next best move that they could do is to change the environments that they're in. But a lot of people are waiting to develop themselves before they change the environment. They're doing it backwards. There's an old saying, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And there's a reason for this saying. Essentially, the human brain is influenced by all the stimuli it receives. You can't make yourself immune to your environment and to the factors in your environments, the people, the situations, the events, the activities all around you. They're all constantly going in as input, data being received and processed by your brain. Think of it like a computer that's constantly downloading every website that you go on. It can't be turned off. It downloads everything. Your brain's a bit like that. It downloads all the data it receives. It sorts through it. It gets rid of some of it, but ultimately you don't have a lot of conscious control over what it does with that information. When I first really got a sense of this was actually not that long ago, maybe 4 years ago. I was living in a flat with a whole bunch of people. It was one of those packed out flats. There was like 6 other people living there. And even though by the time I'd moved into this place, I had really built strong self-confidence, I had launched my own business and was working from home mostly. And I had a rich social life, lots of hobbies going on. I was crushing it. But after a few months of living in this house, I started to notice myself go backwards. I started to smoke weed a lot. I started to get kind of gossipy and superficial in my conversations. I started to slack off at work and my business was struggling. A lot of things were kind of falling apart. My body was getting worse. And I didn't see the evidence. I couldn't see that it happened after I moved into this house. Now, this house was full of party people. They would party from Thursday through to Sunday. And even on the normal weekdays, they'd be drinking and shouting and playing loud music and carrying on. And they weren't into self-development at all. They were kind of in that more materialistic, hedonistic phase of their lives. Their conversations were generally pretty superficial. They would either talk about cars or girls, or they'd talk about each other behind each other's backs. And I was just constantly surrounded by this and participating in it. And I didn't realize until later that I was slowly being pulled into their world. I had an ego problem. I thought that I was so strong in my confidence that nobody could change me, that in fact I changed other people. But they were more stubborn in their way of living than I was in mine, and there was more of them than me. So I started to blend into them. It was very slow and almost unnoticeable, but after a few months, I noticed that I wasn't the guy I wanted to be. You might be in the wrong city, the wrong job, the wrong relationship, living simply in the wrong house, the wrong circle of friends, surrounded by the wrong food to eat. You might be in a situation that is holding you back severely and you can't see it because it's just always been your situation. Or like me, you have an ego problem. You think you're better than your situation, that you're stronger than it, that it won't be able to hold you back or affect you. Humans cannot avoid being affected by their environment. Okay, you are affected by what's around you. It plays a role. It scores points either positively or negatively. So when you look at your situation, you look at your friends, you look at your job, you look at what goes into your body, you look at what it's like to be in your house and who you live with, ask yourself, are they positive or negative? Do they bring me up or do they pull me down? And not in that sense where you feel like they pull you down, but just if they're having any effect on you, is it likely to be positive or negative? Because if it's negative, you have to assume that that's actually happening. That effect is taking place. You are going down, or you're not going up as fast as you could be. Okay, your rate of progress has been severely slowed. I'll give you some examples. There was one girl who came to me for coaching recently. I actually refused to work with her. And the reason was because of her relationship. Now, she was actually a great coaching candidate. I could have done great things with her, but not while she was with her boyfriend. She basically had to be this guy's mother. It's one of those awful relationships that nice guys get themselves into. So her nice guy boyfriend was essentially acting like her son. She had to take care of him, pick up after him. She had to initiate and lead everything. She was expending all her time and energy on taking care of this guy. And during our conversation, it became abundantly clear that this was not the ideal guy for her. This was not a good relationship for her to be in, but she refused to break up with him. And so I told her, I can't coach you if you're with him because it would be a waste of that value. You know, what I could do with you if you weren't with him is exponentially more valuable than what I'm going to be limited to doing with you if you stay with him. So I said no to her for coaching because I knew that if she was with him, I wouldn't be able to provide value. I've got another client, he's got a great philosophy. He's an awesome guy, but he still lives with his parents and they're hypercritical and old school and traditional. So constantly on his case, trying to make him the perfect son in their eyes rather than letting him be himself. So no matter how much he goes out during the day and works on himself and tries courageous acts and takes responsibility and practices being more honest and bold, he has to come home to this. And this has got deep traumatic roots into his childhood. He's transported back to being a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old constantly being controlled by his parents. How is he expected to grow into a man when he has to be a boy every time he comes home? Another client, a new client of mine actually, brand new, we identified during our first couple of sessions that he is built to be a leader. He loves it. He would love it. He's got everything it takes to be a great leader. He knows what a bad leader is. He knows what it means to be a good one. But he's in a job where he's forced to follow an awful manager. So not only is he stuck in the follower position, but under a terrible leader who can't even be a good role model, nobody he can even learn from. So he's in a situation where he wants to be a leader, but he spends 50 to 60 hours following a poor leader. You can imagine how hard it is to develop into a great leader if that's your work situation. So one of the first pieces of work that we're going to do is to find him a job as a leader surrounded by other good leaders. If your progress is slow, you can't blame your brain or yourself. You have to understand who you are is actually a small part of the equation. Your environment is a much bigger one. The variables around you have a much bigger say over your life than you do. And if you can drop your ego and accept that, then you'll realize, well, you do have some power to change the environment. How should I say this? You can't necessarily change the environment itself, but you can remove yourself from it and put yourself in a different environment. You have that level of control, much more so than you give yourself credit for. And that is probably the biggest gain that you could make. That's the highest leverage move that you could make. Rather than struggling and straining to try all these new behaviors, just putting yourself in a more supportive environment will do half the work for you. You can grow anywhere. I've seen people grow in prison. I've seen them grow surrounded by drug addicts. I've seen them grow in crappy dead-end jobs. It can be done, but the rate of growth is terribly slow, and it's really it's like crawling through mud when you could be floating through air. You're least likely to grow or grow quickly in an unsupportive, stressful, traumatic, unsatisfying environment. Surely you can see that. Therefore, if that's what your environment sounds like, or huge elements of your environment sound like that, like your work or your home life sounds like that, then understand you're probably going at like 20 or 30% of your potential at the moment. And that's you trying your best. You're most likely to grow surrounded by supportive people in a safe but challenging environment with like-minded peers who have your best interests at heart, where basically it's like fertile soil for you to grow in. Obvious, right? So when you look in your environment, do you think, I'm surrounded by supportive yet challenging people? I've got an environment that's safe and yet there's plenty of opportunities and encouragement to grow and push my comfort zone. And, the future's limitless. I've got nothing in my way to keep moving forward. Because if you don't feel like that about your environment, then you're in the wrong place. So what this all means is that your first big move when it comes to self-development is get yourself into the best available environment. Quit your crappy job. Really, even if you're broke, just get out of that job into an even slightly better one will like double your chances. If you've got a partner who's a loser, who's dragging you down, who's a narcissist, who's a bully, dump their ass, you know? Break up with them, block them on social media, get them out of your life, and the same goes for any destructive or negative friends you have. Even family. You might reconnect with them later, but get them out of your hair now. Make sure that the amount of time you spend with them is the absolute minimum that you can handle. Every hour away from people like that is a good hour. If you're in a stressful city, or you live in a place that doesn't suit you well, like you're the only brown guy in a white neighborhood full of racists, get out of there. Go somewhere a bit more supportive. You can come back and test yourself in that environment later if you want, but get strong in a safe place first. There's stages to developing your confidence, and first you need to practice in a safe environment. Then you go out into the dangers of the real world. But you don't try to practice in the dangerous real world when you've got no baseline skills. You're just going to get crushed by it. And if you're in a discouraging home environment, honestly, I don't even care if you're underage. Get the fuck out of there. If you've got flatmates that are ripping you off and bringing you down, or you've got parents that are abusing you or bullying you or criticizing you, or you've got a partner who's just constantly on your case and makes you feel like a loser, get out of there. Even if they're out, get out of that house anyway. The house will have traumatic triggers for you. Get into a new environment that makes you feel warm and safe and optimistic. But definitely get away from anybody who's bringing you down. Then you start working on yourself. Hope that helps. But really, for some of you, just stop, look at your environment, and you should be able to answer the question, why are things going so slowly for me? And you'll realize it's not really about you. It's about something outside of you that controls you. If you're going to do a Brojo course to help work on this, I suggest doing our confrontations course. Because most of the time it's about setting up barriers with other people. That's the best way to change your environment. And that course will help you do it. Hopefully this live thing worked. Hope you guys enjoyed it if it did. And if it didn't, I'm talking to myself, which I'm fine with because I do that all the time anyway. And I will see you guys all next time. Cheers.